Hi guys, welcome back to my MS story. This is Martha, and today's video might be a little bit long, so I apologize ahead of time. But I wanted to share with you the number one question I get asked when somebody finds out I have MS. In fact, somebody asked me today. So I thought I'd go ahead and do this video. I think in a video I shared before, I'll let you guys know that I'm also a therapist. I do occupational therapy, and that was kind of to my benefit in my diagnosis of MS, because I knew I had a reflex in my leg called clonus. And we're all born with that reflex, but you know, the first year or so it gets integrated. And so if it comes back after that, it is a strong or definite indication that you have a, what is called in medical terms, upper motor neuron lesion. So I knew that, and I have many patients with that, so I knew that I had something serious going on, but also had a little bit of denial. So I just kind of waited and watched, and I had some balance issues. I had some swallowing issues, which turned out to be reflux, and so after losing 72 pounds, that went away and wasn't an issue with MS. So I had made an appointment with my primary care doctor for urinary tract infection, and it just happened to be one of those times I was sitting there for a few minutes before he came in, and I thought, you know, I really should tell him about these other few things going on. So I did. And he kind of like sat down with his mouth hanging open going, okay. So the first thing he said was, I don't think you've had a TIA, which is a little mini stroke. And my response to that was, I was more worried about MS. So he's like, and he knew I was a therapist, and so he proceeded to do a neurological exam checking my reflexes. And of course I told him that I had clonus, and he knew that I knew what was normal and abnormal as this little test went along. So he didn't even have to say anything. Every time he tested something and it was abnormal, I knew it. So sometimes it's not good to have so much knowledge. But so sure enough, I had clonus. He also checked, everybody knows this one, the little knee jerk where they tap you on the knee and you kick your leg out. So that day when mine was tested, if you'd been standing in front of me, my left leg would have kicked you into next week, and my right leg barely moved at all. So one was very brisk and one was very dull, and they should be equal. Another one that's an indication that you have a lesion on your brain is the Babinski, and that's where the doctor scrapes the bottom of your foot, and if you're positive for Babinski, your toes will flare out versus go under. And that's another one you're born with that should integrate in the first couple of years. And so if you have it after that, another indication you got something neurological going on. So that day he sent me for an MRI, and which turned out to be inconclusive. It just wasn't a really good, the doctors just couldn't see well enough on that particular MRI. But I think back to that day, and you know, I didn't even tell my husband I was going to the doctor that day. I was going for a UTI, and I ended up calling him, leaving the office, and here I go, I'm going to crying and telling him that the doctor thought I had MS and was sending me for an MRI that day. I just can't imagine, you know, how he felt getting that phone call from me, especially not even knowing I went to the doctor that day. And of course, I hadn't shared these symptoms with anybody prior to finally deciding to say something to my primary care doctor. And also, you know, as a therapist, at least I knew what MS was. I don't think a lot of even therapists or people know the full realm of MS, and that there's so many people living with MS, and if you saw them, you wouldn't have a clue that there was anything wrong with them. you know, as a therapist, especially doing occupational therapy, we don't get MS patients until they need, you know, home modifications or adaptations to be able to live and function. So their disability is pretty far along by the time we see them. And that was really honestly where my mind went and was for the first year. So anyways, we went for the MRI, and then for the follow-up, found out that the MRI was was inconclusive. So he went ahead and sent me to a neurologist, and there is not a test that says, oh, you're positive or negative for MS. There are a lot of diseases that have the same symptoms that there are tests for. So that's what they do, is they test for everything out there that have the same symptoms, and if you're negative for all those, they finally go, oh, you have MS. Now, I've had friends and know people that that their testing went much quicker, but they had lost their vision, and that's a huge indicator of multiple sclerosis. So that's kind of the, you know, go straight to the front of the line, you have MS symptoms. So they drew tons and tons of blood. They did another MR of my brain, one of my cervical spinal cord. I had some funky eye test where they used these springs to hold my eyes open and gave me contrast. And, you know, by this time I'm just going with the flow. I'm not really sure what all they're doing. I'm just showing up when they tell me to. I know I looked at some of the lab work, and they rolled out things like syphilis, HIV, cat scratch fever. Never knew that one, or even, you know, never knew any of those might be on the table, but they ruled all of those things out. They finally did a spinal tap, and between the lesions that they found on my brain and my cervical spine and all the negative tests and the inflammation they found in my spinal fluid, led to the conclusion of a diagnosis of MS. So that's how I got diagnosed, and then shortly after that started treatment, which I will do an entirely different video on, because there's so much to that I would like to share. So this is my story of my symptoms that led me to go into the doctor, and the testing I went through. Everybody who has MS is different. Everybody has different symptoms, and that's because your symptoms are directly related to where the damage is on your brain or your spinal cord. So keep that in mind. And so therefore everybody's testing is different too, based on the symptoms that they have. So if you want to share your symptoms or your story or ask questions, be sure and share that in the comments. I'll be glad to answer. Also, like and share and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also share and add people to my Facebook group called Martha's Stem Cell Story. So I shall talk to you